You've been trying to fall asleep for a while now, maybe hours, maybe days. Your mind just won't stop pacing the same hallways of memory and worry looping thoughts that don't lead anywhere. You might be lying in the dark heart drumming over something you can't quite name. Or maybe you know exactly what it is, a loss that never settled. Right, a restlessness that scratches under the skin, a quiet grief that never learned to speak out loud. If you live with anxiety or PTSD or ADHD, you already know that nighttime isn't always gentle. It should be the quietest part of the day, but sometimes it's the loudest part of the mind. The stillness makes space for everything to echo. The brain doesn't know it's bedtime. It only knows how to replay, relive, react. So if you're here at 2 a.m. or 3:17 in the morning, eyes open, still breathing through something invisible and heavy, I want you to know you're not alone. You're safe here. There's no pressure to sleep, no pressure to fix anything. We're just going to drift gently into another world for a while. A world with no expectations, no deadlines, no versions of you to perform. Close your eyes or don't, it's up to you. Let yourself hear this like waves lapping wood. There's a wind now, soft and strange, moving like breath through canvas. You feel it before you even open your eyes, salt in the air, the sound of wood creaking like tired old bones, the distant slap of waves against a hull that doesn't seem to end. There's no sky to see, only a thick, unmoving moonlight, silver cold and blurred like it's underwater. And then a low groan from the ship's timbers, not pain, exactly just the sound of something ancient stretching. You're awake, but you don't know where you are. Your hands are tied. Loosely, not cruelly. But enough to remind you that you didn't choose to be here. Your mouth tastes of salt and stale rum. Your clothes feel damp like you've been near the sea for a long time. All around you is water. Endless, quiet water. A black ocean without a name. You might have been captured. Or maybe you owed someone a favor you couldn't repay. Maybe you climbed aboard this ship in a dream, or followed a lantern into the fog and never came back. But the reason doesn't matter anymore. You're here now, just another soul below deck. A pair of hands for the ropes, a back for the lashes of salt and sun. No one here knows your name. And strangely, that feels like a kind of freedom. This isn't a captain's tale. There's no treasure map, no heroic escape. Just the slow rocking days of ship life. Tar under your nails, biscuits hard as wood, and the occasional kindness of a hammock swinging with the sway of the tide. If anything in this story makes your eyes heavier, makes your breath a little slower, maybe think about liking or subscribing, but only if it feels right. No pressure, no rush. Right now, just check in with yourself. Where are you? What time is it? Are you lying down under a warm blanket? Or are you still sitting up, phone in hand, not quite ready to close your eyes? It's okay. However you're holding yourself tonight, whatever shape your body is in, just notice it. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. If there's a fan nearby, turn it on. Let the white noise wrap around you like fog. You're not doing anything wrong. You don't have to be asleep yet. This is just the start of a quiet story. A small life long ago, floating out on a forgotten sea. Let's begin tonight's journey. Section 1. Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into the sunburnt hush of ancient Egypt, not as a golden god, not as a gilded queen, but as one of the hundreds of invisible hands that made a pharaoh's world shimmer. You're in the palace, but you don't rule it. You clean it. You polish the gods. You light the lamps that others get to enjoy. And yes, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know down in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is cold clay under your cheek. Your eyes aren't even open yet, but the ground tells you everything. It's still dark, and you overslept by a few minutes. Not long. Just enough to make your stomach drop and your heart beat in the wrong rhythm. You scramble upright from your straw mat, trying not to trip over the thin, sleeping limbs beside you. There are a dozen of you packed into this room servant's junior cooks, and a girl who sharpens reeds for the scribes and snores through every sunrise. Your breath fogs a little in the air. Desert cold still lingers, even inside the thick plastered walls. The stone floors remember the night. Your fingers are already reaching for your linen wrap, wrinkled scratchy, still damp from yesterday's wash, and you knot it around your waist with one hand while grabbing your small oil lamp with the other. The wick sputters. Your thumb is blackened instantly. The hallway beyond is ink dark, except for a trail of faint glows flickering ahead of you. Others are up, already moving, already better than you. You follow bare feet, slapping quietly on the cool tiles. The palace is asleep, but not for long. The sun hasn't breached the horizon yet, but the whole world seems to hold its breath for it. Out in the city beyond the walls, roosters crow. Farther out in the fields, you imagine farmers bent over, already coaxing life from dust. But here inside the great estate of the Pharaoh, your job is to prepare for the Pharaoh's day before he opens his eyes. First stop the washing room. It's not luxurious, not for you. This one's just a shallow stone basin filled with cold water from the nightjars. You splash your face, arms and feet, muttering a short prayer to whichever local god oversees not getting yelled at before breakfast. Possibly Tefnut. Beside you, another servant dips her elbows into the basin teeth, chattering. She looks sideways at you and mutters, "Did you hear one of the temple lions sneezed yesterday? They had to clean the entire columned hall." You snort. That tracks. You're next. Today's schedule was posted yesterday in the steward's hall, etched hastily onto a clay tablet with a reed so blunt it might have been a stick. You only glanced once, but you remember, cleaning the hall of divine offerings. You groan, quietly. That hall is enormous, sacred, trapped halfway between a temple and a gallery, and it's full of statues that you're not technically supposed to look at, let alone touch. But today you'll be brushing dust from Ra's headdress, rubbing oil into Horus's falcon feet, and trying not to knock over a ceremonial bowl worth more than your entire family's goat herd. Historians agree that many royal servants lived inside palace walls, often sleeping in communal quarters, with just enough room to stretch if you curled up politely. They were fed clothed, and worked from before dawn until after dusk, performing duties from sweeping sand to massaging royal calves. You dry your face and move quickly through the pillared halls. Your first real moment of awe comes as it always does, turning the corner to the east wing and seeing the morning light just begin to kiss the tops of the columns. Even this early, the architecture stuns you. Painted in blues and reds, pillars like lotus stems stretch up into the still darkness above. They hold up the sky, or it feels like they do. And here you are, shuffling through it, a speck with a rag. You pass a row of low-bowing junior attendants, all carrying jars of honey or incense, eyes low. No one speaks above a whisper. It's not a rule exactly. It's just understood. The gods may still be dozing. You reach the hall of offerings. You stop at the threshold. The room is still, high-vaulted, filled with statues as tall as two men, their eyes lined in kohl, their lips curled in mysterious serenity. You bow just in case and begin. First, sweep. Slowly, carefully, then wipe, one by one. You learn to move like water, quiet, respectful, deliberate. You tip your rag in warm oil rub in circles and never once look directly into the eyes of the statues. You've heard stories, statues that blink, statues that punish. It's probably nonsense. Probably. You finish the floor, your knees aching already. You still have hours left. And the Pharaoh, he's still sleeping. Historians still argue whether servants like you were born into palace life or chosen from villages and trained. Most agree it was a mix. What's certain, once you're here, you belong to the rhythm of this place. You don't rise for yourself. You rise for someone else, for something bigger. Whether that's devotion or just a job depends on the day. Today, it's just a job, and the sun has only just begun to rise. Section 2. You shift your weight and stretch your back as subtly as possible. The Hall of Offerings is still cool, but the oil you've been using makes your hands sticky slick, with the scent of acacia and something more bitter, possibly resin, possibly beetle extract. You don't ask anymore. You just wipe. There's a spot on the base of the Sekhmet statue, one that refuses to shine no matter how hard you rub. You mutter under your breath and dig in with the edge of your cloth, hoping no one important walks by just now. The last time you were caught swearing near a lion-headed goddess, your rations got docked. The floors are next again. Because in the Pharaoh's palace, dust is an enemy you fight daily, and it always wins. By the time the sun fully breaks over the palace walls, your knees are sore, your tunic sticks to your back, and your fingers are lined with grime. You've been up for hours, but the day is only just beginning. It's time to clean the divine again. This time, the private sanctum, where the Pharaoh keeps his own statues, the ones no commoner is supposed to see. Lucky you. You pass through a narrow hallway with painted ceilings, suns, birds, endless boats, crossing endless rivers. The stone underfoot is smoother here, worn down by sandals, more expensive than your entire life. You hold your breath as you pass the antechamber where two guards stand as still as date palms. They don't even blink. You bow slightly, not too much. You're not important enough for a full prostration, but not dumb enough to walk through upright. Inside the sanctum, it's dim, the air thick with incense that never seems to dissipate. The scent wraps around you like a slow river. You can't quite tell if it's calming or suffocating. Maybe both. Historians believe these sanctums were meant to remind the Pharaoh that he was more than a man, that within these walls surrounded by divine imagery, he might remember that he was Horus incarnate, or at least act like it. You kneel and begin again. This room has gold leaf in every corner. It gets in your nose, your sleeves, your mouth. You'd laugh at the irony, scrubbing at representations of eternal power, while your own knees go numb if your lungs weren't full of holy dust. It's delicate work. The statues aren't huge, but they're precise. The eyes are inlaid with lapis, the hair curled in impossible patterns. And if you leave even one smudge, someone will notice. You'll be summoned later by the steward asked to explain why Ra's chin looked greasy. So you clean with reverence, with rhythm, with that half-conscious trance you've developed just for this kind of task. And all the while, the palace begins to wake behind you. You can hear it, distant footsteps, rising voices, the clink of bronze cups being set out for breakfast. A bell rings from the eastern colonnade. The Pharaoh will rise soon, and with him the expectation that every floor, every column, every feathered fan and bejeweled scepter is exactly as it should be. Historians still argue whether servants had rotations if each person specialized in one task, or if you did everything: floors one day, food the next, funeral prep by week's end. Evidence is mixed, but here now you do it all, because you're not just a servant, you are a shadow of the palace, a breath inside the walls, and the palace is alive. You leave the sanctum, careful not to bump the threshold. There's a superstition about that. One servant tripped once and wasn't seen again. Next stop, the Hall of Reeds. It's not your assigned chamber, but you're needed. Someone spilled ink. Again. The hall is where the scribes work, at least 20 of them, lined up like birds along a branch, each with their own writing mat and ink jar. They copy, calculate, and curse constantly. There's always someone mumbling about papyrus quality. You duck inside, mop in hand, and try not to draw attention. But the scribe nearest you points a crooked reed and says, "You again." You always miss the corners. You offer a tight smile and keep wiping. This is how the palace breathes. It exhales problems, and you inhale them. One quirk of this room, the scribes keep cats. Not just a few dozens. They're curled on scrolls, batting at sandals, sleeping in the papyrus baskets. They're sacred, they say, keepers of order. But they also knock over the ink jars you have to clean up. One orange tomcat walks across your foot with imperial confidence. You give him a nod. He doesn't return it. By mid-morning, the sun blazes through the high lattice windows. The heat begins to press inward. The coolness of dawn has fully abandoned you, and the oil from your earlier cleaning now feels like a sticky curse. You smell of myrrh, sweat, and floor wax, a perfect blend. There's a rumor going around that one of the guards caught a high priest snoring during temple prayers. No one knows what happened to the priest. The guard now walks with a limp and a faraway look in his eyes. You return to your quarters just long enough to rinse your hands and change your tunic. One of the other servants, lesser, with the permanent smudge on her chin, offers you half a fig. You accept it like a royal gift. Historians often overlook the lives of people like you. No scrolls document your fig break. No monument praises your ability to remove wax from terracotta without scratching it. But without you, this whole glittering illusion falls apart. You return to work without being told. You don't wait for thanks. You just wipe your hands and move toward the kitchens, where steam is beginning to rise. Section 3. The kitchens are not what you expect. You imagine some massive golden chamber with slaves roasting peacocks on silver spits. That's for the stories. The real palace kitchens, your kitchens, are a collection of low, wide rooms that smell like smoke onions and old bread. There's always a little soot in the air. Always someone burning something. And always a rooster where it shouldn't be. You duck under a wooden beam, one that always tries to bump your forehead, and shuffle past two boys fanning the cooking fire. They're sweating buckets, and one of them has flour in his eyebrows. On the large clay hearths, stews bubble. Something brown and suspicious is being stirred with a ladle that looks older than most of the cooks. You glance at the pot, wrinkle your nose slightly, and decide not to ask. There are lentils in there. You hope. Historians agree that the diet of Egyptian servants was surprisingly decent lentils, barley bread, onions, dates, and beer being staples. Meat, though, was rare, usually reserved for festivals, or for someone else. You reach for a basket of figs. Your job this morning is simple: prepare fruit platters for the mid-morning meal. Not for the Pharaoh, not even for the high priests. For the lesser nobles visiting the palace today. You're allowed to touch their food, but only with freshly scrubbed hands. Which lucky you already smell like lemon ash. You slice dates, arrange cucumbers, fan out slices of melon onto broad ceramic plates painted with blue lotuses. The heat makes the fruit sweat. You wish you could do the same without someone yelling at you to hurry up. You hum as you work, a little melody picked up from the older cook who always sings about donkeys. Outside the open door, a breeze stirs the hanging reed curtain. It carries in the scent of warm sand and faintly horses. Someone important must be arriving. You pause, then keep slicing. The truth is, even if it were the Pharaoh himself, you'd still have to finish this tray. Behind you, Lesser fumbles with a jar of beer. It tips. You catch it just in time. She exhales sharply and whispers, "You're a god." You grin. "I'll remind you of that when you take my washing shift tonight." She snorts. "Nice try." Somewhere in the hallway, a bell rings, high and clear. You both freeze. It's the bell that means Pharaoh is on the move. Instantly, the kitchen transforms. Pots are moved, torches adjusted. Everyone's posture improves by at least 2 vertebrae. You place your platter down and step back. You will not see him. Not today. But the ripple he sends through the palace is unmistakable. Some scholars still debate whether pharaohs moved with daily ceremony or preferred surprise appearances. In practice, the level of panic suggests it doesn't matter. His presence is always felt, whether he's watching or not. After a moment, the bell fades. The kitchen breathes again. You're reassigned. The courtyard fountains need clearing. Leaves have fallen from the date palms, and the surface looks untidy. You roll your eyes quietly and grab the long-handled scoop. The palace courtyard is enormous, centered with a wide stone pool surrounded by flowering papyrus, and a ring of columns so tall they seem to pierce the sky. Birds bathe at the edges. Children of minor officials run around giggling already, dressed in stiff linen, trying not to wrinkle it. You kneel by the pool and begin scooping out leaves, one by one. In this moment, the work is slow, simple. You watch your reflection blur in the water, framed by the stone lions and painted columns behind you. You're not supposed to think too much while working. It leads to daydreams. Daydreams lead to mistakes. But your thoughts wander anyway. You wonder what the Pharaoh dreams about. You wonder if he remembers your name. Probably not. The papyrus rustles in the breeze. You see a flash of white in the far colonnade, noblewomen in pleated dresses gossiping behind fans. One of them laughs. You instinctively look down. Another leaf. Scoop, swirl, toss. Behind you, a scribe appears. He hands you a list, written in blocky, impatient hieroglyphs. More errands. It's always more errands. Today's include polishing the alabaster jars in the guest hall, fetching fresh water for the priest's ablutions, and this one you sigh at combing the wig of one of the royal hounds. Yes, you read that right. The dog wears a wig. Historians sometimes mention the elaborate grooming of royal pets. There are frescoes showing dogs with eyeliner, cats with earrings. You used to laugh. Now you just carry a fine-toothed comb and hope no one sees you whispering apologies to a very grumpy greyhound. You stand. Your knees crack. Again. No one claps. You pick up the scoop, the list, and your dignity and move on. Another hour. Another task. Sometimes it feels endless. The jobs change, but the rhythm remains, like a hymn sung by hands and feet instead of voices. You know this palace better than anyone. You know the echo a footstep makes in the hall of ancestors. You know the way the light hits the edge of the obelisk at midday. You know which statue has a chipped toe that someone keeps repainting with ground ochre every week. The pharaoh may rule the land, but you know where the lint gathers behind his throne. And that feels like something. Section 4. There's a rule you've learned unspoken, but ironclad: don't make eye contact with anyone wearing more than 5 bracelets. You follow it now as you pass through the inner hall toward the alabaster jars. A young noble is being escorted by a cluster of attendants, one of whom looks like he might faint from holding up a tray of pomegranates. The noble's bracelets jingle softly, like wind chimes made of coin. You lower your gaze, slow your steps, and let the clinking entourage sweep past like a procession of over-perfumed peacocks. The jars are tall, heavy, and cold to the touch. Polishing them feels like trying to shine fog. You dampen your cloth circle, each one with slow, steady strokes, and try not to let your reflection in the glossy surface remind you how tired you look. Historians agree that alabaster was a prized material in ancient Egypt used for sacred oils, ritual vessels, and very expensive status symbols. You don't need a scroll to tell you that. You can feel it every time a steward inspects your work with a look that says, "One smudge, and it's your week's barley gone." You glance around to make sure no one's watching, then give one jar a tiny pat on the rim. There you whisper, "Good as new." No response, probably for the best. As you're finishing the final jar, a runner bursts into the room. Not literally, though it feels that way. He skids a little on the polished floor and waves a reed scroll wildly. Water. Now, for the priests. You nod. No words, just motion. Because here in the palace, everyone's always running from one task to the next like ants in linen. And if you stop too long, someone will assume you're dead or worse, available for another task. The well is behind the garden wall. You jog there with an empty jug balanced on one hip. It's hot now, full heat. The kind that turns stone floors into stovetops and wilts the edges of the scrolls left in the sun. Your sandals slap against the path. A dove flutters by, unbothered by your haste. Drawing water isn't hard. Hauling it is. The jug is heavy. The rope rough your palms already sore from the alabaster. Still you carry it back step by step, sweat trickling down your back, the cool slosh of water your only reward. The priests are waiting. They don't thank you. They never do. One of them merely dips his fingers in the water, mutters a prayer, and moves on. Another looks at you like your presence might be causing spiritual disharmony. You bow slightly and retreat. Historians still argue whether palace servants held any religious reverence for the rituals they supported, or whether they were just very good at nodding at the right time. You suspect it's a little of both. Reverence and repetition get tangled after a while. Your next task arrives on the heels of Incense, the royal hound. He's lounging in the sun, like a hairy slab of arrogance. You squat beside him, holding the comb like it's a sacred relic. Because it is, in a way. It's carved bone passed down between generations of unfortunate dog bathers. The handle is worn smooth, the teeth are uneven, and the dog is not impressed. You start at the ears. The wig is mostly decorative now, shedding slightly, smelling faintly of cedar and regret. The hound snorts as you work, as if he's well aware you're beneath him. You hum under your breath and hope he doesn't bite you today. Not again. One quirky truth, pharaohs really did adore their animals. Some even had tombs built for them. That hound you're combing his name means victory of the sun, and he probably eats better than you do. He yawns in your face. Thanks. You finish up, give his fur a little pat, and move on. One of the scribes is waving at you now, his arms full of torn scrolls, and what appears to be a very annoyed goose. You pretend not to see him, just for 5 seconds, just to enjoy the illusion that you're free. But of course you're not. You're never free in the palace. You're just between assignments. Still there are moments. Moments like now when you pass the side courtyard and see the fountain catch the light just so. When a palm tree's shadow falls across the stone tiles in perfect symmetry. When a breeze rustles through the garden reeds. And for a heartbeat, the air smells not of sweat and incense, but of possibility. Moments where you remember that the palace isn't just a place of labor. It's alive. It breathes. And you tired, barefoot, half smiling, you're one of its many, many lungs. So you straighten your back, wipe your hands, and walk toward the next task. Because the pharaoh may be divine, the nobles may be painted, and the cats may be worshipped, but it's the quiet footsteps of servants like you that keep this place from falling into silence. Section 5. There's a sound you've come to recognize, not from training, but from repetition. It's the shuffle, click, whisper of secrets. It comes from behind you now, echoing through the arched hallway. You slow your steps, your jug of water finally empty, and press one hand to the smooth plaster wall. The whispers grow louder. You don't turn around. That would be a mistake. In the palace, the walls have ears, and the corridors have eyes. But you lowly servants, semi-invisible beneath notice, are allowed to hear what others cannot afford to be heard hearing. 2 nobles pass by. You recognize the first by her amber perfume, thick as syrup and sweet as rot. The second wears sandals with gold thread straps that click against the tiles. If he marries her, that's 2 provinces at stake. But the priests want another festival and the treasury. Their voices trail off as they vanish behind a hanging linen curtain embroidered with lotuses and tiny, tired sphinxes. You exhale slowly. This is the 3rd time this week you've overheard a conversation like that. You don't understand every word, but you understand the tones. Tension, envy, ambition. Everyone here wants something, and almost no one is getting it. Historians still argue whether palace servants became informal spies, swapping gossip for grain or favour or just survival. You've never had the courage, but you tuck the words away all the same, just in case. You enter the vestibule again, where the air is heavy with beeswax and old incense. A steward motions you toward the guest courtyard with a wave that says, "Go." No eye contact, no words, just that flick of the fingers. You nod and obey. Your next job is cleaning the water vessels for visitors, the copper ones. They're light enough to carry, but not so light that they don't bruise your hips if you move too quickly. You scrub each one by hand, dipping cloth into warm water, trying to erase the marks of fingers that wear more rings than you've ever owned socks. There's something oddly comforting about polishing copper. It starts dull. It ends bright, unlike people. You catch your reflection in one of the jugs. Tired eyes, crooked scarf, smudge of soot under your left cheekbone. You wipe it off, but it only smears. You glance left. There sitting in the corner is one of the younger stewards, half asleep, head resting on a stack of folded linens. You want to shake him awake, tell him the nobles are coming. But then again, maybe you'll let him dream 5 more minutes. The palace rarely does. When you finish with the jugs, you carry them into the courtyard. The columns rise like petrified giants around you. Shadows fall long and blue over the limestone. You kneel, place each jug carefully, the way you've been taught, symmetrical, balanced, upright. The water must ripple once, and then still like a mirror made of breath. You remain kneeling as the first group of guests enter. One of them is a young noble with sandals so clean they squeak. He doesn't see you. He never does. You are a surface he walks past, but that's how it's meant to be. You wait until the murmurs fade and the guests are settled. Then you rise and head toward the kitchens again. Not to eat, not yet, but to help with the next round of preparations. Always more preparations. On the way, you pass a crack in the wall where the plaster's chipped away. A tiny gap, big enough to see through. On the other side is the private garden, the one only the Pharaoh's family uses. You shouldn't stop. You do anyway. Through the gap, you glimpse her, the queen. She's sitting by the lotus pond, dressed in pale green linen, her hair braided with gold wire and little beads that catch the sun. She looks bored. Beautiful, but bored. She plucks petals from a white flower and drops them into the water one by one. You wonder what she's thinking. You wonder if she ever dreams of simpler things. of walking barefoot through the reeds, of being unseen. You back away. No one catches you. Another servant might whisper that you're daring, or foolish, or both. Historians have never agreed on how much access servants really had to the inner sanctum of royal life. The official answer is none. The real answer is as much as they could get away with. You return to your duties. There's a hallway that always smells of jasmine and mildew. You pass it now. The smell is comforting in its familiarity, like old sheets left in the sun too long. You pause at a window. The sky is changing. Evening will come soon. The light has turned the colour of baked clay, and the palace hums with anticipation. You still have 3 more tasks before you eat. But for a moment, just a small one, you rest your hand on the stone sill, close your eyes, and let the sunlight warm your face. There are worse lives, you tell yourself. And then under your breath, just for you. But there are better ones too. Section 6. By the time you reach the storeroom again, the sun has shifted to that golden angle that makes everything look sacred, even dust motes. You're sent to retrieve 2 things, fresh fish paste and the clean ceramic bowls, which are stacked so high you'd swear someone was building a small breakable pyramid just to test your nerves. The paste is for the cats. Yes, the cats. Not the scribes, not the queen, not even the priest who speaks in riddles and eats dates like they're grapes. No, this paste smooth, oily, expensive is reserved for a certain group of very demanding residents, the palace's divine felines. You tiptoe across the tiles with the bowls stacked in your arms. The paste sloshes with every step. And if even one smear ends up on the floor, the head caretaker will glare at you like you've spilled ink on a god's forehead. Cats, after all, aren't just pets here. They're sacred, protected by law fed before most humans. And let's be honest, unbearably smug about the whole thing. Historians agree that cats were deeply revered in ancient Egypt, associated with the goddess Bastet. Killing one even by accident could mean death. You try not to think about that as you round the corner and see 3 of them already lounging in the feeding alcove, staring at you like you're late. Because you are. One stretches yawns and flicks its tail. Another pads over, with deliberate steps tail high, as if you were the one being inspected today. The third simply blinks. Judging. Always judging. You set the bowls down gently, one by one, and spoon the paste into each, with the reverence of a ceremonial offering. You whisper a quiet, "Please don't scratch me today," under your breath. The cats remain silent, but the one with the torn ear seems to smirk. While they eat, you back away. This is your moment to breathe. You lean against the cool wall and listen. Purring, soft slurping. Somewhere far off, a musician is tuning a lyre. Here in the feline corner of the palace, things are quieter. Quieter, but no less strange. One of the cats, the smallest, wears a tiny golden collar engraved with symbols you can't read. You once asked who gave it to her. The other servants just shook their heads and said, "She chose it." You believe them. No one chooses for the cats. They rule their domain with a twitch of the whiskers. And as you're about to leave one of them, not the smallest, but the fat one with 3 scars on its back, rubs against your leg. It's the highest honor you'll receive today. You walk out into the corridor, smiling just a little. It fades quickly though, because a steward appears panting and wild-eyed. The courtyard, he says. Dust. Everywhere. You don't sigh out loud. But inside, you sigh. The courtyard apparently has been struck by one of Egypt's lesser plagues, an unexpected dust storm. Not a full desert squall, just enough wind to send fine grit into every carved crevice of the paving stones, every papyrus leaf, every corner the nobles will see within the hour. You grab a broom and a cloth and step into the sun. It stings your eyes immediately. The light is sharp, the dust swirling in drowsy spirals. You sweep carefully, trying not to stir more into the air than you remove. Your feet leave faint patterns behind circles, arcs, lines. It's hot. Hot enough that you wonder how the gods don't melt. Hot enough that you can't remember what cool felt like. Somewhere behind you, a clay pot crashes. You turn. One of the newer servants, barely out of boyhood, has dropped it and now stands frozen, face pale, as a scribe yells from across the way. You keep sweeping, not out of cruelty, but because you've been that boy before, and soon he'll be you. Historians still debate the hierarchy among palace servants, how rigid it truly was. Some say tasks rotated. Others believe there was a clear ladder, one rung at a time. You're not sure which version is true, but you know this. You used to sweep this same courtyard as a child. And now, years later, you're still sweeping it. Just faster, just quieter. You finish the final corner just as a procession approaches. Not a grand one. Just a few officials, some minor nobility, and what appears to be a very confused goat on a leash. You step back into the shadows, avoiding the plume of perfume that trails behind them. And as they pass, you notice the youngest noble trips slightly on his own robe. You allow yourself a single internal laugh. No one sees. No one ever does. You return your broom to the storage nook, wash your hands in the stone basin, and glance once more at the cats, before disappearing into the servants' hall again. They're licking their paws, untouched by dust, untouched by anything really. You envy them, but only a little. After all, they don't get to eat lentils with you later, and you've heard there's garlic in the stew today. That counts as a luxury. In a place like this, everything counts. Section 7. The stew does not have garlic. That was a lie someone told to raise morale, probably the same person who swears that the Pharaoh once looked directly at a servant and said, "Thank you." You're starting to think both stories belong to the same pile of dusty daydreams. Still, you sit with the others on the shaded side of the courtyard wall, your bowl balanced on your knees. The lentils are gritty, the bread is slightly sour, and the dates, well, there are no dates. But you chew slowly and pretend not to mind. Around you, the servants eat in silence. The kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from exhaustion. You hear soft burps, the clink of clay spoons, and the lazy flapping of linen fans, someone stitched from reeds and leftover cloth. There's even a game of who has the worst blister, quietly unfolding between two kitchen hands. One lifts their foot, the other winces in admiration. You win by simply not removing your sandals. A breeze slides in through the narrow hallway, smelling faintly of cooked onions, sun-warmed stone, and something else, something green and wet. The garden, your next stop. You stand, joints aching more than they should at your age. The midday sun is overhead, now a disk of white fire, and your shadow beneath you is the size of a frog. You fetch the wooden rake and straw broom and head to the courtyard gardens, where luxury is grown leaf by leaf. It's not a grand garden, this one's tucked between the lesser halls, reserved for scribes and visiting officials. But it's carefully tended with little patches of fragrant herbs, rows of flowering reeds, and narrow channels of irrigation, fed by the palace's water system. You start with the path raking away leaves, brushing dust off the stepping stones. Then you move to the water channels. They always clog. Always. Papyrus strands stray feathers, even once a piece of sandal that someone denied losing. Today, it's a dead frog. You blink at it. The frog blinks back. Then it slides limp and resigned into the basket with the rest of the debris. You tell it softly, "You're lucky. You get to rest now." Historians still argue whether palace gardens were purely decorative, or served medicinal and culinary purposes? You suspect the answer is both. You've seen healers snip thyme sprigs one day, and decorators weave lotus garlands the next. You sweep your way past the reeds and pause by a row of small sycamore saplings. Someone's left a bead necklace hanging from one of the branches. It sways in the breeze, catching glints of sunlight forgotten, or offered you can never tell. You don't touch it. The gardener arrives, then an older man who wears a hat shaped like a collapsed loaf of bread and talks to plants like they're his nieces. He nods at you and asks, "They've been singing today," you reply, in tune. That's enough conversation. You spend the next hour weeding, watering, sweeping, and trying not to be spotted by any nobles who might request a flower for their hair or a quote from a scroll. You're already behind schedule. When you finally leave the garden, your hands smell of mint and soil. Your back hurts, but the quiet of the green world has settled something in you. It's the only part of the palace where time seems to slow. Back in the hallway, everything is moving too quickly again. A steward runs past shouting for someone to fetch extra linens. A kitchen boy drops a platter of figs and nearly cries when the head cook mutters, "Pharaoh wept less when his uncle died." And you are handed a tray of grape juice and goat cheese and told, "Don't spill, don't trip, don't breathe too loud." The tray is for the scribes. You walk slowly, the juice wobbles, the cheese sweats. In the scribe room, the air is thick with ink and heat. Long scrolls line every wall. Two men argue about hieroglyph spacing. One of them is missing an eyebrow. The other seems to be growing a second. You set the tray down without a word. One scribe glances up. "Oh, you again." You don't smile. He does. Barely. As you turn to leave, you hear him mutter, "Tell the one who made this cheese that it's too sharp." Almost bit my tongue. You wonder what it's like to have time to complain about cheese. Back in the hallway, the tray is empty, your arms are shaking, and the heat is unbearable. But the cats are fed. The garden is tidy. The scribes have juice. And you have 10 minutes before your next task. Enough time to crouch in the shadow of a pillar, let the cool stone rest against your back, and pretend that you are a stone too. Smooth. Still. Unbothered by scribes or sandals or sacred rodents in decorative collars. The silence is broken only by the sound of bees in the distance, buzzing in the garden you just left, probably circling the sycamore, where the forgotten necklace still sways like a secret. You close your eyes. Just for a moment, the palace hums around you and you breathe deep, then stand again. Time to keep moving. Section 8. You're back on your feet again. You don't remember the last time you sat for longer than a song. Time inside the palace is not measured in hours, but in errands one after another, until your memory of breakfast feels like a rumor. This next task is deceptively simple. Serve midday refreshments in the Hall of Scrolls. Deceptively. The Hall of Scrolls is not serene. It's where scribes, architects, and stewards gather to argue politely and sometimes not so politely over royal projects, temple expansions, festival calendars, the right colour for the Pharaoh's newest barge canopy. This is not a place where mistakes go unnoticed. You balance a tray of wine jugs chilled with wet linen and a bowl of figs. Your left hand holds a stack of fresh writing reeds wrapped in cloth. Someone always forgets theirs and demands a replacement, like their life depends on it. The doors creak open, and immediately you feel it, the tension. Thick, like the glue they use to bind scrolls. Inside, 5 men sit on low stools around a broad stone table covered in diagrams. One scroll is so long, it coils onto the floor, looking like a sleepy snake. A 6th man, tall balding with a blackened toenail, is pacing and muttering about shadow angles on sundials. You try to slide in quietly like wind, but the wine sloshes just enough for everyone to glance your way. One of the architects sighs. Put it down gently, not like you're feeding goats. You nod, silently. Set the tray down on a low pedestal, arrange the goblets. The figs look too ripe. One bursts slightly, and now it's leaking juice like a wounded beetle. You resist the urge to wipe it with your sleeve. A heated discussion is unfolding over the placement of a new obelisk. One of the scribes insists it should face east. Another says northeast by 4 finger widths. You don't dare offer an opinion. Though to be fair, you've seen them argue over where the Queen's perfume shelf should go to. Historians still argue whether scribes held true administrative power or merely served as mouthpieces for the elite. You have your own opinion power as the man who never carries a tray. The room gets louder. Someone knocks over a reed. Ink stains the scroll. A high-pitched wail comes from the pacing man. It might be a sneeze, might be a curse. You start backing out of the room, slowly, but then a voice. Wait. You freeze. One of the younger scribes, his head shaved unevenly, squints at you. Did you bring more red ink? You blink. No one told you to. No honored one, you say softly. He waves you off like you're a fly. Useless. You nod again, still soft, and continue backing out. You found it's better to leave before they remember something else they want. Back in the hallway, your heart's racing for no good reason. You inhale deeply. Dust, wine, and old scrolls cling to your skin. You hear laughter behind a carved doorway. Music, too. Soft plucking of strings and a woman singing about lotus flowers and river reeds. Not for you. You return the empty tray to the kitchen, where one of the cooks is battling a goose that escaped its pen. The goose is winning. You sidestep the feathery chaos and get handed your next job by a steward with a mole shaped like a beetle. More water. Queen's chamber. Of course. The Queen's chamber isn't far, but the path must be spotless. You grab the water jug, heavy warm from the sun, and start walking, placing each foot with care. You pass the frieze of Sekhmet on the western wall. The lion-headed goddess stares you down every time. You whisper, still here, as you go. The Queen's antechamber smells like crushed flowers and incense. 2 maids wait inside, braiding a long train of hair onto a ceremonial wig. They don't look up. You refill the water bowl near the window, wipe the rim with a linen cloth, and straighten the towel beside it. Everything must be aligned. Always. You're about to leave when you glimpse the Queen's robe draped on a stand, embroidered with gold thread and tiny shells shimmering like wet sand in moonlight. You dare not touch it, but you do notice something. The left sleeve has a single tiny stain. It's shaped like a flower, probably perfume, probably harmless, but someone will still be blamed. You don't tell anyone. You walk back out down the corridor, lined with fans shaped like lotus leaves, back into the heat of the day. A cat watches you from the shadows, still judging. You nod to it. It blinks slowly, like it knows all your secrets. You press your back against a column for one breath, one full breath. Then you start walking again. Because there is always something else. Always one more cup, one more scroll, one more fig that's too ripe. Section 9. There are certain sounds you come to fear in the palace. A dropped goblet, the rustle of royal sandals, a steward whispering your name like it's a death sentence. But none are quite as chilling as this. The Queen is coming. Not shouted, not sung, just quietly uttered by a linen-clad attendant, eyes wide with the understanding that somewhere, someone is about to panic. Today, that someone is you. You're in the linen hallway, folding sheets when it begins. The phrase floats through the air like a bird of prey. The Queen is coming. then again closer. She's almost here. You barely have time to breathe before you're swept into motion. A maid tosses a comb your way. A steward tells you to stand straighter. Someone else shoves a bowl of rosewater in your arms and points down the corridor. You run, but silently. Palace running is a delicate art. You must appear brisk, urgent, and yet never frantic. No sandals slapping, no heavy breathing, just swiftness with grace. You arrive outside the Queen's Hall just in time to find a pair of priests arguing about where to place a ceremonial palm frond. It's a lot. They shove it toward you. Hold this one hisses, no wilting. You clutch the frond like it's a newborn. Your hands already smell of rosewater and now also palm sap. Then she arrives, the Queen. No trumpet, no parade. Just a shimmering presence that seems to hush the air itself. Her linen gown gleams impossibly clean. Her jewellery clinks softly gold and lapis, probably heavier than your breakfast ration. Her face, beautiful, bored, and powerfully perfumed. You are several feet away and still feel as though you've been slapped with lilies. Or maybe myrrh. Or possibly both. Historians still argue whether the royal perfumes were layered by season status or just personal whim. One moment she's near you, the next, she's past trailing a mist of scent expectation and the heavy silence left in her wake. No one speaks until she's gone. Then suddenly everyone speaks at once. She didn't even look at the palm. Did you see her earrings today? I think her wig is shorter. Does that mean something? You say nothing. You just return the palm frond which you've somehow bent in the middle. Hopefully no one notices. You walk away feeling like you've just survived a very polite sandstorm. Your next stop is the hallway of statues. You're sent there to dust the busts. Again. The busts never complain. That's the nice thing about them. They stare into eternity with blank stone eyes while you climb a rickety stool and carefully wipe their brows. You give each one a quiet nickname. This one's Squinty. That one's always judging. And the one near the end, you call her Ma'at Jr. because her nose is slightly crooked and you think it makes her look wise. You once whispered a joke to her. She didn't laugh. Still, she's your favourite. You finish your work with care, removing cobwebs, adjusting a flower garland, someone hung off centre, and brushing away a layer of fine sand that somehow finds its way inside every sacred place. That done, you head down toward the scribe hall again, but this time, it's not for wine or scrolls. It's for an even stranger task delivering a message about mice. Apparently the Queen's cat has been catching too many, and they want someone to do something about it. You are that someone. You locate the scribe responsible for palace animals. Yes, that's a real job, and pass along the complaint. He nods solemnly, scribbles something down, and tells you, "We'll notify the rodent manager." You don't ask. You just nod back like that's the most reasonable title in the world. On your way out, someone stops you with a cloth bundle. Take this to the music chamber. Inside the bundle, 2 rattles a reed flute and a note that says, "Do not let the Pharaoh hear this rehearsal." Of course. The music chamber is tucked near the western wall, far from the Queen's residence. A precaution. You slip inside quietly and find 2 musicians already practicing. One strums a harp, the other hums. They look at you like you're a messenger from the gods. "Is that the new flute?" one asks, practically glowing. You hand it over. He tries a few notes. It squeaks like an annoyed ibis. They both wince. "It'll mellow you offer." He nods. "Or we'll bury it." You leave the musicians to their squawking. Back in the hallway, it's quieter now. The Queen has passed. The scribes are buried in ink. The cooks are chopping again. The cats are judging in doorways. And you're already being summoned elsewhere. The tray is waiting. The water's lukewarm. The next errand is unknown. But that's the rhythm of palace life. No explanations, no resting, and certainly no second helpings. You straighten your back, adjust your tunic, and carry on. Always forward, always quiet. Section 10. There's something about being trapped in a room with a bored scribe that feels eternal. You're sent to the antechamber of the West Archive, not a glamorous location, but far from the kitchens, which is its own kind of gift. Your mission is simple. Wait for the royal scribe to finish drafting a ceremonial blessing, then carry it without folding, smudging or breathing on it too hard to the head priest across the courtyard. You sit on a woven stool in the corner, surrounded by shelves of papyrus scrolls. It smells like old ink, warm dust, and faintly of goatskin. The scribe enters. He is thin with a long face and fingers permanently stained with black. He does not greet you. He does not sit. He begins pacing the room like it owes him answers. You wait, and then he speaks. "Tell me," he says, gesturing vaguely in your direction, "do you think this line flows well?" He reads aloud a string of elaborate blessings in flowery hieroglyphic phrasing. It sounds fine to you, but you say the only thing a servant should ever say in such moments as you wish honored one. He frowns. No, I need honesty. This is a blessing for the Pharaoh's second cousin's third child. It must echo with spiritual resonance. You resist the urge to blink very, very slowly. Instead, you nod as if contemplating the depth of the Nile itself. He starts over, then again, and again. At one point, he changes a single hieroglyph, an ibis, to a lotus, and reads the whole thing out loud 4 more times to hear the vibration. Historians still argue whether scribes were treated as low-ranking bureaucrats or revered creative minds in ancient Egypt. After spending half an hour with this one, you wonder if the truth lies somewhere in between, and also wish someone would invent an emergency exit for awkward conversations. At last he pauses, sighs, and announces, "It's ready." You stretch slightly, knees popping like dry reeds. He rolls the scroll, ties it with a thin red cord, and hands it to you like he's handing off a newborn star. You bow low. "I will carry it safely." "See that you do," he says, already beginning to pace again, muttering about a separate blessing involving donkeys and starlight. You exit. Quickly. The courtyard is blinding in contrast, sunlight bouncing off limestone and polished tiles. You squint your way to the temple wing, dodging a gardener with an enormous broom and a pair of children chasing each other with date seeds. The head priest is waiting under an arch, dressed in white linen that barely moves, despite the breeze. He accepts the scroll with a nod, says nothing, and turns to disappear into shadow. You're dismissed with a flick of his fingers. You pause under the same arch just for a moment to savor the coolness. And then your name is called. You turn. A young steward is waving at you. Help needed in the east courtyard. You jog over sandals slapping lightly. When you arrive, you're greeted not by chaos but by silence. 3 painters are standing around a half-completed wall mural, arguing in whispers. The color's too dark. No, the pigment's perfect. It's the brush. It's the humidity. Your role in this delicate, artistic dispute to fetch more water for mixing, and possibly to be blamed for whatever goes wrong next. You take the empty jug and cross the hall to the utility fountain, where 2 other servants are already in line. One is singing a song about crocodiles stealing fruit. It's catchy. When it's your turn, you fill the jug, careful not to let any leaves slip in. You glance down at the water. It ripples with your breath. Sometimes you wonder if you looked long enough, would the water show you what you really are? Not your face, but the shape of your life. A ripple, then another. The moment passes. You return to the muralists set down the water. They barely acknowledge you. You don't mind. In fact, it's a rare kind of peace being invisible among people more distracted than you are. You stand for a minute, watching one of them dab the wall with ochre made from crushed stone and goat milk. Ever tried painting, one asks. You blink. No honored one. He shrugs. Didn't think so. Still better than hauling bricks. You nod. That at least is true. You're called away again before you can reply. This time to the linen closet. Not for linens, no. This time you're to escort someone. A noblewoman from a distant province has arrived, and you're to help guide her to the inner guest wing. She's taller than you expected, wrapped in indigo-dyed cloth that rustles when she walks. Her hair is braided with green beads, and she smells like lemons. She says very little, but her gaze is sharp. You guide her through the mosaic hallway past the statue of Hathor into a shaded wing with tall curtains and gold-edged doorways. At one point she asks, "Do you live here?" You're not sure how to answer. "I work here, honored one." She tilts her head. "And when do you rest?" You smile without smiling. "When the palace sleeps." She says nothing more. You drop her off bow low and leave the room backward as is proper. The moment the door closes, you lean against the wall and sigh. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because there's still half a day left. And palace days are the longest of all. Section 11. Your next task arrives folded inside a piece of fabric, literally. A young girl no older than 10 comes running through the hallway, her arms bundled with embroidered cloth and fresh figs. She nearly crashes into you, then shoves the bundle into your hands and gasps, "For the princess." "Room by the garden. Don't squash the figs." Then she darts away like a startled ibis. You look down. The cloth is silk, the embroidery lined with tiny golden beetles. The figs smell overly ripe warm with sun. Somewhere in this bundle lies prestige and a trap. You carry it with both arms like it's the body of a sacred cat. The hallway to the princess's chamber is tiled with blue-glazed bricks. Light pools in the corners, silent and soft. A cat watches you from a windowsill, judging as cats do, probably counting the figs. You pause outside her room. The curtain is drawn. You tap gently. A servant inside pulls the curtain aside and peers at you. "For the princess," you say, holding out the bundle. He eyes it, then you, then gestures you inside. The room smells like pomegranates and scented oil. Cushions are stacked along the walls. Incense curls lazily from a carved stone bowl in the center. And there, reclining under a sheer canopy, is the princess. She is not reading. She is not writing. She is peeling petals off a lotus flower and arranging them by color. She doesn't look up, just murmurs, "Did you bring the honeyed figs?" You nod. "Yes, honored one. Don't squish them." "I didn't." She finally looks at you. Her eyes are lined with kohl. Her hair is heavy with beads. Her expression is unreadable. "You're new," she says. "Not quite," you reply. She smirks. "They never last long." You place the bundle on a low table bow and retreat. No one stops you. You count that as a win. Outside, the air feels cooler somehow. You exhale slowly. Then someone calls for you again. The pool. You blink. The what now? The palace pool. They need someone to scrub the bottom. Of course. You arrive at the courtyard where the sacred pool glimmers in the sun. The water is shallow, meant for reflection and ceremony. But right now, it's full of floating petals algae, and what appears to be the chewed remains of a date cake. You tie up your tunic, wade in, and begin to scrub. The stones are slick. The sun burns your shoulders. Occasionally, a gardener passes by and offers unsolicited advice. Use the stiff brush, or you missed a spot by the ibis statue. Historians still argue whether these ceremonial pools were meant strictly for ritual, or if royal children really did sneak in for midnight splashing contests. You're inclined to believe both. By the time the pool gleams, your fingers are wrinkled and your knees ache. You climb out dripping and sandy. No time to dry off. Someone is already pointing you toward the kitchen. It's nearly sunset and the evening meal is being prepared. You're put on fruit duty. That means peeling dates, pitting olives, and slicing melons so precisely that one of the cooks measures them with a reed ruler. He watches you like a hawk as you work. Too thick, too thin, too enthusiastic. You didn't know enthusiasm had a thickness, but okay. Eventually you find a rhythm slice, pit wipe, repeat. You hum quietly to yourself, something about crocodiles and fruit perhaps. It helps. The meal is plated onto ceramic trays with patterns of lotus and heron. You help carry them, walking in a line of other servants through the great hall, past columns painted with stars toward the dining chamber of the nobles. You won't be allowed inside. You stop just before the threshold, handing your tray to a more senior servant, who vanishes into the golden glow beyond. You catch a glimpse just for a moment of dancers, twirling goblets, raised faces lit by torchlight. Then the curtain falls shut again, and you return to the kitchen. Your meal is simpler. A piece of bread, some mashed beans, a wedge of dried fig if you're lucky. You eat outside, sitting on the cool steps by the garden, sharing space with other servants and 3 very smug cats. One curls against your leg. You let it. The stars are just beginning to appear. You look up. You wonder if the princess looks up at the same sky from her tower window. You wonder if she sees the same stars. You finish eating. You lean back, and for a moment, everything feels still, quiet, balanced, until someone shouts again. Always someone shouting, but for now, you pretend not to hear, just for a few more breaths. Section 12. You don't get many quiet moments in the palace, which is why they always feel suspicious, like the calm before a sandstorm. And right on cue, just as you're starting to think you might sneak in a real break, someone grabs your elbow. Temple priests, they whisper, and the words land like thunder in your ears. You bolt upright. Temple priests means ceremony. Ceremony means chaos, and chaos means you. They're arriving at dusk for the monthly moon offering, a quiet ritual by name but not by practice. There will be incense. There will be chants. There will be someone forgetting the words. There will be inevitably fire. You are summoned to help open the main ceremonial doors, the big ones. The ones that creak like an old camel's knees and require 4 people to budge. The hallway fills with smoke before you even see them. The temple priests, 10 of them, maybe 12. All robed in layered white linen, so stiff and pristine you'd think linen had opinions. They glide, not walk, and wherever they go, the air smells like myrrh-dried lotus petals and something bitter, maybe crushed beetles. One priest is humming under his breath. Another holds a tray of small jars, unguents, oils, resins, none of which you are allowed to ask about. You push open the doors, palms aching from the pressure. Light spills in from the outer court. It's golden, heavy, a different kind of sacred. The priests file past you in silence. One pauses, looks at you, says nothing. You hold your breath. Then he moves on. You exhale. Historians still argue whether these rituals were more political theatre or genuine religious devotion. Standing here in the swirl of smoke and gold-leafed robes, you suspect it was both. Once the doors close behind them, your job shifts. Now you help prepare the offerings. A small team of servants gathers around baskets of fruit cuts of bread and folded cloth. Everything must be arranged just so. Not because the gods are picky, but because the priests are. A fellow servant whispers, "One time a plum rolled off the plate, and they made us start over." You nod solemnly. You believe it. Tonight's offering includes figs, barley cakes, a dish of honey, and a small clay jar of beer. You carry it on a bronze tray, arms trembling slightly, not from the weight, but from the pressure. You do not trip. You do not spill. You place it exactly where told. No one praises you. That's how you know you did well. Then comes the incense. The air thickens until it feels like you're breathing through a warm scarf soaked in perfume. Your eyes sting. You blink furiously discreetly. The priests begin to chant. Their voices rise and fall like wind across reeds. Deep, then high, then deep again. It's hypnotic. You feel your knees soften. You lean against the wall, pretending to brace the tray. And for a moment, you forget. Forget what time it is. Forget your name. Forget that your feet ache, that your tunic is damp, that you haven't sat down properly since sunrise. All you feel is the chant, the smoke, and the flicker of oil lamps dancing against stone. It might be beautiful if you weren't so tired. Eventually the ceremony ends. The priests file out again slower now, as though gravity itself has changed. You help extinguish the lamps, one by one. With each one snuffed out, the palace grows quieter, dimmer, as if it's exhaling. You carry the leftover offerings back to the kitchen. Not all will be wasted. Some will be passed to the guards, some to the scribes. Maybe if you're lucky, a barley cake will find its way to the servant quarters. But not yet. First there's clean-up. Always clean up. You and two others gather the ash bowls, scrape wax from the floor, and sweep up fallen petals that cling to your feet like shy beetles. One girl sneezes 3 times in a row. You hand her a corner of your sleeve. She laughs. You smile. It's not much, but it's a shared moment, and those are rare here. The corridor is nearly empty now. A single oil lamp flickers at the far end, and shadows stretch like dancers across the tiled floor. You take a slow breath. Almost done. Until someone rounds the corner and says the words you never want to hear at this hour, the head steward wants you. You suppress the groan rising in your chest. Instead, you nod, bow slightly, and walk, always walking. You make your way past the perfumed halls, past the painted columns, past the pool that still smells faintly of algae and afternoon sun. You knock on the steward's door. "Enter," he says. He's not alone. There's a palace guard standing beside him, a tall man with a curved staff and a face carved from stone. The steward gestures to a small wrapped bundle on the table. "You'll carry this to the northern tower. Do not open it. Do not drop it. Do not ask what it is. Understood, you say? Because what else is there to say?" He adds, "Deliver it before the last bell." You check the courtyard. That gives you maybe 20 minutes. You bow, take the bundle, and step back into the cooling night. The tower looms on the far side of the palace. Your feet ache, but you move fast anyway. Because the palace never sleeps. It just waits. Section 13. You hurry across the open courtyard, the clay tiles beneath your feet still holding the heat of the day. The bundle under your arm is small, about the size of a loaf of bread, wrapped in linen sealed with a tiny wax emblem shaped like a falcon. It doesn't weigh much, but it feels heavier with every step. Not in your arms, in your mind. The northern tower looms ahead. Not one of the grand towers. This one is squat square, slightly crooked if you squint at it from the right angle. It leans like it's tired of the gossip it has heard for decades. A tower of storage mostly. Sometimes scrolls, sometimes grain. Once famously a lost goat. Historians still argue whether the goat incident was real or just palace legend passed around by bored scribes. You knock on the thick wooden door. Once, twice. No one answers. You knock a third time. A flap opens with a snap. A single eye peers out. Narrow, suspicious. "The head steward sent me," you whisper. To deliver this, a grunt. The door unlatches, creaks open. Inside it's cooler. Stone walls lined with clay jars and baskets. The air smells like old parchment, dry herbs and mystery. The kind of place where secrets go to nap. A man in a faded tunic takes the bundle, without a word, gives a curt nod, then shuts the door in your face. Delivery made. No one clapped. You weren't expecting anyone to. On your way back, the corridors are emptier now. Oil lamps flicker lower. The quiet feels thicker. The marble floors whisper back your footsteps. You spot a broom leaning against the wall. You ignore it. Someone else's turn. You pass the artisan's quarter, a tucked-away corner of the palace where scribes, weavers, and sandal fixers live and work. Tonight, most are asleep or softly humming over their last task of the day. But one man is still awake, crouched in the dim glow of a clay lamp, fitting a gold clasp onto a leather sandal. He glances up. You the one who ran through the garden with the figs earlier. You blink. Maybe. Could have fooled me. You looked more like a gust of panic than a person. You chuckle quietly. He returns to his clasp. You're lucky, he mutters. Why sandals don't complain? Only squeak. You nod, unsure if that's wisdom or sarcasm. Maybe both. Past the artisan's hall, you spot a young servant chasing a runaway goose. The goose is not amused. Neither is the servant. You don't stop to help. You've earned that right by now. As you near the central stair, another order finds you. Runner. We need a message sent to the royal mason. You consider denying being a runner, but your feet give you away. Dusty, blistered. The unmistakable badge of someone who's been delivering things all day. The mason's quarters are across the lower courtyard behind the second granary. You go. Of course you go. You pass under a colonnade lined with painted scenes of lotus and papyrus. One depicts the Pharaoh being blessed by the gods. Another shows a servant pouring wine, probably you in a past life. The mason is half asleep, reclining beside a chunk of limestone, his beard speckled with dust. You hand him the scroll. He groans. More tiles. Already. You shrug. Don't know. Didn't open it. He breaks the seal, squints. Ah, repairs in the Queen's chamber. Cracked wall. Again. Earthquake, you ask. He snorts. No. Just politics. You're not sure what that means. You decide not to ask. On your way back, you pause at the servants' quarters. Your legs beg for rest, but you're flagged down again this time by a woman with a bundle of torn linen. Can you take these to the threadmaster? She asks. You blink. Now, if he doesn't fix them by morning, the dancers will be barefoot. You sigh. Then nod. Of course. The threadmaster is in a narrow chamber beside the main hall. You've never been in his space before. It's smaller than you imagined and smells like beeswax old thread and quiet rage. He looks up as you enter. Thin, sharp eyes, fingers stained with dye. You hand him the bundle. Who tore it? No one said. He grumbles, picks up a needle the size of your finger, and begins threading it without looking. You leave before he asks you to hold something. The palace is now almost silent. Almost. There's always some creak, some footfall, some sigh. Even in the darkest hours, the Pharaoh's house breathes. You return to the central courtyard, sit on a low stone bench, let your spine curl like a reed. Overhead, the stars are crisp and cold. A silver ribbon of moon arcs over the rooftops. The air hums faintly with the sound of insects and far-off wind. For once, no one is calling your name. You close your eyes, just for a moment. But then, you hear it. Footsteps. You don't groan. Not aloud. A girl no older than 12 appears at your side, eyes wide breathless. They lost the Pharaoh's sandal again. You look at her. She nods. The left one. Of course it's the left one. You stand. Your feet protest loudly. Your knees creak in solidarity. But you follow her into the shadows anyway. Because in the palace, no servant is ever truly done. Not until the sun rises. And even then, only briefly. Section 14. Dawn peeks over the sandstone horizon, like an exhausted god blinking awake after a long night. You stand beside a low basin, rinsing your arms in water that's already warm from the air. A soft gold light filters in from the east, casting long shadows of your elbows and cheekbones against the tiled wall. Your hands smell faintly of wax and pomegranate rind. The scent of sleep clings to your tunic. You haven't truly rested, but you've dozed on your feet. And somehow that counts. The sandals have been recovered. Not by you, thankfully. A kitchen boy found them behind a woven mat. No one knows how they got there. The Queen's handmaid suspects a ghost. The palace guards suspect each other. One priest said it was a sign. You said nothing. You haven't spoken in hours. There hasn't been time. Your next task, as it happens, is serving breakfast to the scribes, which sounds peaceful until you realize there are 9 of them today, instead of 6, all arguing about how many crocodiles should be in a mural. One says 2, another insists on 4. The eldest among them shouts 7, which you suspect is just his favorite number. Historians still argue whether scribes held more power than priests in daily affairs. What's certain is that both groups demanded figs with their flatbread and complained if the honey was too thick. You carry in the trays, one arm balancing a bowl of olives, the other gripping a jug of watered wine. They barely glance up. They're busy sketching something onto a long papyrus scroll, what looks like a battle scene. But one scribe is drawing smiley faces onto the shields. You say nothing. This is not your business. You pour the wine. You step over ink pots. You avoid the one scribe who gestures too widely when excited. He nearly decapitated a servant with a reed pen last month. Outside the palace stirs. Gardeners begin sweeping the paths with bundled palm fronds. Musicians test their harps near the courtyard pool. The sun climbs higher, turning the stone corridors into rivers of heat and dust. Someone sneezes behind you, and another servant blurts, "Don't let the high priest hear that." You stifle a laugh, but it bubbles anyway. After the scribes, your next stop is the linen room, where 2 other servants fold cloth with a precision that borders on magical. They fold tunics so flat they could slip under a door. You hand in a bundle of stained robes from last night's ceremony. One of the women clicks her tongue. "Myrrh stains again," she mutters. It's always the myrrh. You nod in solidarity and back away slowly before you're asked to help. As you exit, a boy races past you, holding a tray of cosmetics. He trips, recovers, keeps running. The coal jars clink ominously. You pray none spill. Coal is expensive, and when it gets into sandals, it never comes out. You take a moment in the cool shade beside the fish pond, where 2 egrets pick through water lilies, as if critiquing the floral arrangement. A cat slinks by tail, high, ignoring you completely. Royal cats are above everyone, even the Pharaoh sometimes. A sudden shout draws your attention. A young noble has managed to get stuck halfway through a narrow doorway in the eastern chamber. His robe is too wide. Again. This is the 3rd time this week. You shake your head, sigh, and join the team sent to dislodge him. It takes pushing, tugging, and one strategically applied pot of olive oil. Eventually, he slips through with a grunt and a sheepish grin. He does not thank you. He adjusts his collar and vanishes into the hall like a breeze made of entitlement. You wipe your hands on your tunic and check the angle of the sun. It's nearly midday, which means it's time for the lunch procession. Servants gather in the main corridor, forming a long line of dishes balanced on wooden planks. Roasted quail, lentils with cumin, baskets of warm bread and goat cheese wrapped in vine leaves. The smells are heavenly, cruel really. You've eaten nothing but a half pomegranate since sunrise. You carry a dish of stewed dates toward the guest wing. The corridor there is wide and cool with murals of Horus and Thoth looking down as if judging your posture. The guests are minor nobles from the Delta visiting to discuss irrigation. They look bored. Their robes are creased. One keeps sighing as if that will summon entertainment. You place the dish on the table bow and leave, but not quickly enough. One guest points at you. "You there," he says. "You look familiar." You freeze. This could be anything: an accusation, a compliment, or confusion caused by low blood sugar. "I've seen you in the Western Garden," he continues. "You were chasing something." You nod politely. "Yes, a goat, my lord." He laughs. "Ah, that was you." The laughter spreads, and for a moment you are more than a servant. You are a story, a small one, a funny one, but a story nonetheless. Then they return to their meal and you fade back into the hallway, another pair of sandals moving silently on stone. The sun continues to rise, and so do you. Because even as the palace blooms into its daily spectacle of rituals, gossip, sandals, and sunburns, it is you and the others like you who keep its heartbeat steady. Section 15. The hallway you walk through now is narrow and unusually quiet. The thick walls swallow sound, keeping voices and footsteps trapped like beetles under clay. Your arms are full again this time. You're carrying a tray of carved wax tablets and a reed brush tucked into your sash. The Pharaoh's youngest son has decided quite suddenly that he is a writer. A dangerous turn of events. You are sent to deliver the supplies with the firm instruction: smile, but don't speak unless spoken to. The boy is only 8, but already he wears gold cuffs on his wrists and speaks with the casual cruelty of someone who's never tied their own sandals. He takes the tablets from your tray without looking at you, dips the brush into black ink, and promptly begins drawing what you can only assume is a war chariot battling a duck. You don't comment. You bow and leave as instructed. Outside the chamber, a fan bearer leans against the wall, half asleep, feather plume drooping like a wilted palm frond. He made me wave this thing for an hour while he stared at a beetle. The fan bearer murmurs. You offer him a sympathetic look and keep moving. The palace is slowing now. The noon sun makes everything heavy, syrup thick. Even the chatter softens. You return to the courtyard where servants nap in the shade of stone columns, legs stretched out, arms tucked beneath heads. Some have mastered the art of napping while sitting. One girl is asleep while still holding a broom, a truly elite skill. You let yourself slide down a wall into a seated sprawl. The stone is cool through your tunic. Somewhere above, doves coo lazily from a rooftop niche. A breeze stirs, carrying the smell of thyme and clay dust. You close your eyes for just a second, just a moment. A whisper pulls you back. Time to light the lamps. You open one eye. Of course it's that time. The sky is still bright, but inside the palace, darkness creeps quickly. And the Pharaoh's house must never go dark. You rise with a groan and join the others. The lamps are small, elegant things, clay and bronze, filled with oil and fitted with tiny woven wicks. You light each one, carefully shielding the flame with your hand. One by one, they glow to life, tiny stars scattered across corridors of polished stone. Historians agree that these oil lamps serve not only for illumination, but also as symbolic protection wards against the encroaching night. Some believe the placement of lamps followed sacred geometry mapping divine protection across a household. Others argue it was simply practical. Whatever the reason, your job is to light them all. As the final lamp flickers awake, the shadows retreat like sighs. You're handed a fresh tunic. Evening duties require clean clothing, no stains, no frays. You pull it on quickly behind a pillar, adjusting the ties with practiced hands. The cloth is stiffer than your morning tunic, with faint embroidery around the hem. Decorative, but not for you. You're just the moving hanger it clings to. Evening brings ceremony. Torches are mounted at the outer gates. Musicians gather in clusters, tuning harps, stretching fingers, whispering gossip. A priest passes you his bald head, glistening with perfumed oil. He smells like lotus and stern expectations. You hurry toward the banquet hall. You won't be dining, obviously, but you'll be there, carrying platters, refilling cups, fetching more bread, more water, more everything. Always more. The hall is dazzling. Columns painted with cobalt and gold. Ceilings high enough to catch echoes. Low tables spread with fruit roasted meat and bowls of honeyed almonds. Incense coils in the air like polite smoke. Dancers wait in the wings draped in sheer linen eyes, outlined in black. The Pharaoh isn't here yet, but his seat, elevated wide, flanked by carved lions, is already casting a presence. You take your place beside the side door, ready to step forward when summoned. Across from you, another servant gives a small, tired nod. You return it. No words needed. The guests begin to file in. Nobles in finely pleated robes, rings, glinting sandals, spotless. They speak in low voices. Some laugh too loudly. One man is already drunk and hasn't even sat down. You can tell by the way he high-fives a column. Then comes the procession. Slow, ritualistic. The Pharaoh enters. You bow so low your forehead nearly kisses the floor. He passes. You don't look up. You never look up. The music begins. So does the night. You step forward, platter in hand, keeping pace with the rhythm of the hall. No missteps, no spills, no eye contact. And yet, you see everything. Who whispers to whom? Who refuses the wine? Who steals figs when they think no one's watching? You are the palace's eyes. You are its rhythm, its breath. You are invisible and yet vital. And as the night deepens, as laughter mixes with music, and the torches flicker higher, you move through it all like a shadow with purpose. Section 16. The night air outside is finally bearable warm, instead of scorching fragrant, instead of choking. You take a moment in the outer hall, where the breeze slides through the lattice screens like a whispering servant of its own. But your rest is short-lived, because the lyres are out of tune again. Someone forgot to tighten the strings, and now one of the musicians is panicking. She plucks a string and winces, plucks again, winces harder. You're handed a tiny clay pot of oil and a bundle of spare string, and told fix this before the Pharaoh hears it. You're not a musician, but you've restrung a lyre more times than you've had full meals in a week. You squat low in the dim corner of the music alcove, working by flickering torchlight, while the dancer beside you stretches her ankles and mutters curses at a sandal strap. The lyre creaks. The strings tighten. The whisper of sound changes from a dying goose to something almost pleasant. Good enough. You hand it back with a nod, and the musician gives you a grateful pat on the shoulder, then immediately wipes her hand on her tunic, probably because you're sweating. Again. The evening entertainment begins in proper now, and it is not modest. Peacock girls enter, first fanning their feathered fans with theatrical flourishes. You meanwhile are crouched behind a decorative screen with a tray of honey-roasted locusts, yes locusts, balanced on your knees. You are told not to move until the third verse of the harp song. You wait, knees cramping. The locusts smell oddly appetizing. You are very hungry. The third verse arrives. You rise and glide forward, offering the tray in the graceful two-handed pose you've practiced hundreds of times. A noble plucks a locust between two fingers, bites, chews, smiles faintly. No reaction. Good. That means it was fresh. One small disaster averted. The dancers swirl and flicker like candle flames. Their linen costumes catch the torchlight and throw it into rippling patterns along the polished floor. You watch from the edge, entranced for half a second. Then someone claps and you're moving again, refilling a cup, gathering empty plates, offering a warm towel to a guest who just sneezed into his lap. Historians often debate whether palace entertainment was meant more for the pharaoh or the guests. In truth, it doesn't matter. Because for you, it's background noise to your real performance appearing, disappearing, anticipating, reacting, always just in reach but never in the way. You're a master of timing. A plate drops behind you, ceramic shatters. You don't flinch, not anymore. Someone else scrambles to clean it. You continue on balancing a bowl of almond pudding, so smooth it looks like moonlight in a dish. You've never tasted it, but you've watched others take 3 helpings. That tells you enough. You pass by the Queen's handmaids, who are fanning her with woven reeds soaked in lavender water. The Queen's smile is fixed, her gaze detached. She doesn't blink much. You wonder how tiring that must be. Later, near the end of the feast, you're called back to the musicians. A drum has split. You fetch the backup. A torch has burned too low. You light another. Someone has drunk too much pomegranate wine and is now trying to explain his theory about pyramids being built by birds. You escort him gently toward the garden before he embarrasses himself further. The courtyard is quieter. The sky is velvet, now scattered with stars as sharp as scarabs' backs. A fountain gurgles beside you, cool and soothing. You let yourself stand still. Just for a second. A cat brushes your ankle, the same one from earlier with one torn ear and an expression of complete authority. It stares at you, blinks once, and disappears into the night. You're summoned again. Back inside, the final act of the evening has begun. A fire dancer twirls in the center of the room, flames licking the air. Gasps and applause follow his every movement. You pretend not to be impressed, but secretly, he's amazing. Probably doesn't have to clean latrines during daylight hours either. The feast winds down. Guests begin to leave, slowly, reluctantly. Nobles gather their sandals and gossip in hushed tones. You gather trays, stack cups, roll up rugs. A noblewoman stops you with a crooked smile and places a dried flower in your palm. For luck, she says, then walks away. You stare at it unsure. It's just a hibiscus already crumbling. But for a moment it feels oddly meaningful. You tuck it into your sash. The dancers vanish. The musicians pack up. The Queen's guards escort her back through a side corridor you're not allowed to follow. One of the peacock feathers lies abandoned near the fountain. You pick it up, give it to a younger servant who's still too shy to ask for anything. And then slowly the palace begins to sleep. Not you, of course. You still have work to do. But the noise has quieted. The air is cooler. The tension has softened. And for now, that's enough. Section 17. It's late now, though no one's really counting. The sky outside the palace has gone from velvet to pitch. If you squint through the decorative grilles of the upper windows, The stars seem to have shuffled themselves around. A whole constellation has dipped behind the palm grove. Inside, it's the time of muffled footsteps and half-spoken commands. You're summoned to the far wing of the palace, a quieter corridor, lined with thick woven drapes and ornate jars holding sprigs of dried myrrh. The Pharaoh has retired for the evening, which means now the real final shift begins restoring the spaces he left behind to immaculate silence. Your task is specific. You must stand by in the shadows of the hall during the dance of the peacock girls, should His Majesty require a fresh bowl of cold melon, or worse, need someone to blame, if anything doesn't meet his expectations. You carry a tray of snacks, one shaky knee, slightly bent arms, locked in just the right angle for display. The bowl in the center is small and silver, the melon cubes perfectly aligned. You can't remember the last time you had a cube of melon. You try not to think about it. The peacock girls return, this time without the fans but with ankle bells that whisper like wind chimes. Their performance is more subdued now, less spectacle, more rhythm. The strings and harps accompany them in soft patterns. Their feet are bare, their makeup slightly smudged. They've been doing this since sunset. You don't see the Pharaoh, but you sense him, high above on the viewing platform behind the curtain. A barely visible silhouette, still as a statue, but somehow more intense. One of the dancers falters slightly. Her heel skids on an uneven tile. A second dancer adjusts their timing to compensate, and the moment passes. You exhale, hadn't realized you were holding your breath. After the performance ends, you melt back into the hallway, just as the musicians begin packing their instruments into linen wrappings. You pass a scribe who's dozed off with his stylus, still in hand, forehead smeared with ink. You think about drawing a beard on him. You do not. A bronze bell chimes once. That's the signal. Cleanup begins. You trail into the banquet room, now emptied of nobles and now bursting with mess. Pomegranate skins, spilled wine-shredded napkins, crushed lotus petals. It's hard to tell where the entertainment ended and the chaos began. You sigh, roll up your sleeves and start collecting. There's an art to this part of the evening. You can't just clean, you must erase. All signs of disorder must vanish as if they never existed. Cushions are to be refluffed. Rugs must be realigned with the cracks in the marble. If a single fig seed remains between the floor tiles, there will be questions. You do not want questions. As you work, you hear distant giggling. A cluster of palace children run past barefoot late disobedient, probably the offspring of visiting nobles. They vanish into the shadows like little goblins, leaving a trail of laughter and plum pits behind them. You'll sweep those up later. In a far corner of the hall, someone has drawn something obscene in wine on the wall. You sigh again. Really, you smear it away with your sleeve. There, gone. Historians still argue whether these late-night entertainments were as frequent as records suggest, or whether the palace scribes exaggerated the grandeur. But you know this much, the aftermath is never exaggerated. The mess is always real, the floor always sticky, the silver always out of place, and the servants always expected to make it disappear. Your tray is heavier now, loaded with empty dishes, half-eaten bread and a napkin someone definitely used to blow their nose. You stack it with two others and carry the whole lot back through the winding corridors toward the servants' wing. You pass a priest who nods at you, or maybe he just sneezed. Back in the kitchen, the fire has been reduced to glowing coals. A cook snores in the corner. Another is still scrubbing a massive pan, moving in slow, looping circles. The smell of overcooked lentils still lingers. You drop the trays onto the washing bench with a soft grunt. Back already, one of the other servants asks, eyes wide with mock surprise. "I missed you," you mumble. He laughs. Sure you did. You splash some water on your face. Cool, sharp, like a splash of the Nile at dawn. Your arms ache. Your knees protest every crouch. There's something sticky on your sleeve. You really don't want to investigate. But finally, the palace grows quiet. You hang the tray back on its hook. You place the folded cloths in their cubby. You blow out the final kitchen lantern, and you allow yourself to walk, not scurry through the back hallway toward your shared quarters. The peacock girls are gone, their feathers scattered like dreams on the floor. The nobles are asleep, and in a few moments, so will you be. Section 18. The final hour of movement feels different from all the others. Not just slower, but softer, like the palace itself is exhaling. You tiptoe down the servant corridors, which now carry the scent of extinguished torches and warm stone. The walls, though, made of limestone and plaster, seem to radiate sleep. Your legs carry you almost on instinct. You no longer think about the turn after the alabaster statue or the creaky floorboard 2 steps before the servants' quarters. Your body simply moves where it must. Memory muscle habit. You reach the storeroom first, because of course you do. You forgot earlier the Queen's favourite linen cover needs to be returned. You fold it as neatly as your tired fingers allow, then set it on the highest shelf, balanced just so. Next, the altar. Not the real one that's guarded, watched, perfumed, and surrounded by polished obsidian jars. No, you stop by the smaller offering shelf tucked near the rear courtyard. It's used by staff guards, junior scribes, anyone who wants to whisper a quiet prayer to Thoth or Hathor, or whoever might still be listening at this hour. There's a small clay dish already holding 3 dates, a burnt fig, and a single copper bead. You add your own contribution, a tiny carved scarab, worn smooth from being rubbed between your fingers for years. You whisper something inaudible, or maybe you just think it. It's enough. From here, your next duty lies with the outer gates. They must be checked locked, not that anyone's breaking into a pharaoh's palace on foot, but still. Ritual is everything here. Order, the illusion of control. You walk the perimeter with another servant. The 2 of you don't speak. You just nod at each corner and tug each bolt. The heavy wood groans under your hands. 1 hinge squeaks. You wince and make a mental note to oil it tomorrow. On your 3rd turn past the courtyard, you stop again, because the sky is worth it. A wide black canvas stretched and dappled with stars. A few still burn bright enough to reflect in the palace's still pools. The moon is a silver curve just rising. The papyrus plants whisper softly against each other in the breeze. You sit at the edge of the fountain for a moment. Not long, just long enough to hear yourself breathe. There's a feeling that creeps in sometimes in these after hours. A strange kind of peace tangled with exhaustion. It's the knowledge that no one is watching. For once, you're invisible without fear. A background character in a still painting. The world doesn't need anything from you right now. You enjoy that, but duty calls one last time. You return to the kitchen annex where a bundle waits for you, the pharaoh's fruit offerings for the morning. They must be placed by hand onto the elevated tray in the antechamber beside the sleeping chambers. Not by a scribe, not by a priest. That's a servant's job. Your job. You gather the small basket. Grapes, figs, a pomegranate half wrapped in damp cloth to keep it fresh. You cradle it with both hands like a newborn. Along the way, you pass the sleeping quarters of the palace animals. The cats are curled like commas on warm stone. The dog, yes, singular, grumbles in his sleep, paws twitching in a dream chase. You smile. A guard lets you pass with a nod. You don't speak. You place the fruit silently on the offering tray, adjusting the pomegranate just so. Historians still argue whether these late rituals had symbolic meaning or were simply another layer of royal habit. Either way, you do them carefully, because every detail counts. Even now. Finally, you reach your own quarters. Not quite a room. More like an alcove with mats of straw and a curtain to divide one bed from another. You share it with 3 others. One snores like an ox. One grinds her teeth. The third is already curled up, hugging a ragged piece of linen. You collapse onto your mat. Your body makes a soft thud and you let it. The straw pokes your shoulder. Your feet are dusty. Your arms ache. But it's quiet. The world for once has no more commands to shout at you. Just sleep. You close your eyes, the smell of candle wax still faint on your fingers. Someone turns over nearby, muttering in a dream. You don't stir. You drift. In the palace above you, golden ceilings shimmer in torchlight. The Pharaoh sleeps behind walls as thick as tombs. His guards still patrol. His cats still prowl. But you, servant of no renown, have survived another day. Another perfectly forgettable, exhausting, strangely holy day. And that is enough. Section 19. Even in sleep, the palace doesn't stay still. A rhythm hums through its foundations. Drums in the distance, quiet footsteps, the occasional squeak of a cartwheel. The Nile never really sleeps either, it just lowers its voice. But for you, morning creeps in slowly. Before you even open your eyes, you feel it, the stiffness in your legs, the faint itch of straw against your cheek, the cool breath of dawn sliding in through the fabric of the curtain, the scent of ash from the kitchen fires. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs into a blanket. You sit up. Not all the way, just enough to pull your legs under you and stretch your back until something pops. You groan like someone 3 decades older. It's a shared noise. Everyone in the servants' quarters makes it eventually. Then, as if by a signal, the curtain rustles. Someone mutters about the time. Someone else says something about honey cakes, but it's probably a dream. You don't speak. You just rub your face and shuffle toward the washing station. A bowl of cool water waits. It's not fresh, but it's cold. You splash it over your face and blink rapidly. Your reflection stares back from the basin eyes, puffy hair pressed flat skin, shaded with sleep lines. You nod to yourself. It'll do. You dress quickly. The same simple linen tunic, the same sash tied without ceremony. You tug your sandals on with your heel, then roll your shoulders. The day hasn't started, it's already resumed. You're back in the kitchen wing first. Because of course you are. A baker's assistant hands you a tray of early offerings, bread rings, dried fish, small jugs of thick beer. All meant for the priests who will arrive before sunrise. You carry the tray past the mosaic hallway, the one with the cracked blue tiles. You step lightly so as not to clack. The palace is just beginning to stir. Torches flicker as the first light creeps in through the ceiling vents. You deliver the food, bowing as you do. The priest doesn't thank you. He never does. You leave silently. Your next stop is the laundry basin. Because overnight, someone decided to vomit grape wine and lotus seeds all over the ceremonial carpet. And guess whose job it is to carry it out to be scrubbed? You grip the rug with 2 others and heave it up, each corner heavy and still damp. You try not to breathe through your nose. One corner leaks onto your foot. You trudge across the inner courtyard, passing the scribes' quarters. One of them yawns openly as he sharpens a stylus. Rough night, he calls. You nod. At least no lion inspections today. He chuckles. Yet, in the washing courtyard, 2 young girls are already pouring water from clay jugs into a low basin. They look at your carpet and groan in unison. Not again. You help them lay it flat, then begins scrubbing the edges. The scent is worse when wet. You don't look up until a bell chimes 3 times. That's the call. You rise, wipe your hands on your sash, and begin the walk to the front courtyard. There's something strangely ceremonial about it, even though you're just one of the many bodies arriving. Because it's time. Time for the daily final offerings. Despite the name, they're not truly final, more like the last symbolic tasks before the Pharaoh officially begins his day. Each servant selected must carry an item fruit, water, incense, cloth. Each item must be carried with reverence, even if your feet are blistered and your nose is running. You're handed a folded linen cloth embroidered at the edge. You hold it before you like a gift and walk with the line of servants toward the small altar at the outer gate. A priest chants softly. The Pharaoh does not appear, he never does. But you bow and place the cloth on the altar. A guard nods. Another servant lights a cone of incense. The scent curls upward like a question. Historians still argue whether these offerings held deep spiritual meaning or were simply a ritualized form of clocking in. You don't care. It feels real. It feels necessary, like brushing your teeth or straightening your bed. The final offering complete, you exhale. One by one, the servants peel away, some to kitchens, others to gardens, a few back to the linen rooms or halls. You take a moment, not long, just long enough to look at the rising sun cresting the palace wall. It turns the white stone golden. The breeze is still cool. You close your eyes. You survived yesterday. You will probably survive today. And tonight, well, with any luck, you'll fall asleep again to the sound of torchlight flickering on the walls, carrying dreams of cooler water, quieter halls, and one whole pomegranate you don't have to share. Section 20. Evening folds over the palace like a well-worn robe. You can feel it in the hush of the corridors, the way voices lower and sandals scuff a little softer against stone. It's not quiet exactly. There are still servants hauling cushions, guards exchanging shifts, a scribe somewhere complaining about missing ink, but it's hushed. A kind of respectful fatigue. And somehow you're still moving. Your last task of the day is simple: tidy the guest courtyard. No grand procession, no golden trays or ceremonial fans. Just fallen palm fronds, crumpled napkins, and a small smear of honey on a limestone bench that has now attracted 4 bees and 1 sleepy scarab. You swat them gently away and wipe the surface with a damp rag. The linen smells faintly of mint. Someone must have added too much to the wash again. The air is cooling fast now. The breeze slides in from the river, heavier than before. It carries the scent of mud and myrrh, of roasted garlic and horse sweat, and something else you can't quite name, something green and wide and far away. You straighten slowly, your spine clicking like old door hinges. Nearby, an entertainer plucks at a lyre testing strings for tomorrow. You know it's not for you, but the notes still settle into your chest like feathers. A lullaby meant for no one in particular, meant for the palace itself. You find yourself staring up at the high walls again. They don't feel oppressive at this hour. They feel ancient, protective, as if even the stone is tired and ready to close its eyes for a while. Back inside the servants' wing, someone's already blowing out lamps. You move on instinct now. You set your sash neatly on the peg. You fold your tunic in half, then half again. You wash your face with the last cold splash from the basin. You lie down on your mat of straw. This time you sigh. Not the sigh of frustration, or the one you let out when someone asks you to carry just one more tray of lentil stew. This sigh is quieter, smoother, a full-body exhale, a thank you to no one. The straw pokes you as always. The mat smells like sun-dried cloth and someone else's feet. You don't mind. The sounds around you fade gently, someone whispering about a dropped necklace, the soft glug of a wine jug being refilled, a distant creak of the main gate's hinge being secured for the night. You think of the Pharaoh sleeping under silk, guarded by lions, surrounded by silence. Then you think of your own feet calloused and sore. You think of the cats who get more praise than you do. You think of how tomorrow you'll do all this again. And somehow, you're okay with that. Because somewhere between carrying incense and scrubbing tiles, between bowing to stone statues and avoiding eye contact with priests, you've become part of something. You are a thread in the palace's fabric. Worn, yes, but not broken. And now the day ends not with a shout or a bell, but with a whisper. The walls dim. The air cools. The corridors stretch long and quiet, like the arms of some sleepy god. Even the Nile seems to hush itself for the night. You lie still on your straw mat arms, folded gently over your chest. Your legs feel heavy now, but not painfully so, just present like the roots of a tree that has held the same soil for many seasons. Somewhere nearby, a torch crackles, then sputters. You imagine the stone beneath you giving off the warmth it gathered from the sun today. You imagine that warmth travelling up your spine, loosening each muscle one by one. Your hands unclench, your shoulders soften, your breath slows, settles. And as your eyelids droop, the palace continues without you, silently, smoothly as it always has. Maybe someone else is tucking a corner of linen into place. Maybe another servant is placing fruit in a bowl. Maybe a cat is curling at the feet of a statue. But for now, it is not your turn. Tonight, you have done enough. You have scrubbed, bowed, carried, and endured. And the palace in all its grandeur and gold will spin on for one more night, with or without your tired hands. So let the linen rustle gently. Let the sandstone walls hum in your dreams. And let yourself disappear, just for now, into the quiet, warm dark.